There we are.
You're good, Jake.
And yeah, I think so. I'm just watching my uploading thing. Okay. And we're back after some technical difficulties. And I'm glad that we've patched them up. Michael is not joining us. Mike is on assignment. And the assignment is that he's on a panel discussion at the University of California, San Francisco. So we wish him well. But I'm going to resume our conversation with Aaron because it's fascinating. And I have some follow-ups, as I'm sure the listening audience also does. So I'm going to try to represent the listening audience the best that I can. But this is one of those, as I was listening to you talk, thinking it's going to be top of the queue for me, for people to listen to. I'm going to assign this to patients, certainly my students and my interns. I'm going to blast it across all my social media channels and say, everyone needs to listen to this story because there's prevention that could be taking place at many, many stops along the way. There could have been many intercessions and there weren't. And I understand there's a different time and place then as it is now. You know, the 80s, 90s, not everybody was hyper vigilant and attuned to children who are self-harming and slipping into depressive states and that sort of thing. Now we are, but I think like then, now we still have the same type of hesitation to intercede. And this is one of those conversations that gets had by people in the I guess in the circles, in the sectors, but also people who are outside, the lay people who ask questions like, do you know how to stop a school shooter? And I just had one of those conversations yesterday where I said, yes, actually we do. The Secret Service has lots of, data on this, and they actually have a roadmap on how to identify potential school shooters, at least at the child and adolescent level, not necessarily adults who come in after they've graduated, right? But in the school setting, yes, the Secret Service has figured it out. And a gal that I met through the interwebs, Tannehill Glenn, who's a psychiatrist, she's a researcher. She's figured out a matrix, but then it's the action taking part. We need a school administrator, a school leader with a spine. We need social services with a spine. We need a juvenile justice system that's with a spine and adequately empowered to step in and not just hold some kid for 24 hours and let him back into the same screwed up situation from which he was removed, right? We have to galvanize everybody to take actual steps, not worry about the screechy, shrieky, lying parents and capitulating to them. Okay.
And
that all laid out.
That right there is the biggest thing. And I'm so glad you mentioned that last one, because I hit that note like a hammer every time that I talk to people, is that the biggest opponent you guys are facing is the parents. It's always the deception and the lying and the trying to hide. Like the fact that they were able to go so long with that kind of chaos was because nobody wants to question the parents. Nobody wants to get that personal. Honestly, and this is slightly diversionary, but it's the exact same kind of phenomenon, but it's rhetorically why I never mentioned these two things. Whenever I talk, I try to avoid the two terms gun control and mental health. And for the same thing as what we were just talking about there. If you mention gun control, you get lost in the minutia of the details. Is that a bump stock? What kind of ammunition is that? What kind of rifle is that? You get lost in that forest of details, and instead of you lose sight of the goal of the argument, which is we want to keep weapons that can kill a lot of people out of the hands of someone like I was 30 years ago. Like that should be a really easily agreeable goal from all sides. Because I don't care about the gun collector, the dude that owns 30 rifles. You are not the one I care about. You're like a car collector. I care about the guy that wants one rifle. I don't care about the guy that wants 30 to stock his room with them. You know, I don't care about you with your ballistic armor. I care about the guy that wants one handgun to take off one target. Like that's the dude I'm worried about. But on the other side, mental health is this big gray cloud, is this big blob, and it's this bigger amorphous mass that you can't really penetrate, you can't really question because it's so personal, so you can't really ask too many questions. So it's just this cloud of mental health. So if you say someone has a mental health problem, it's just, okay, mental health, that must be one of 1,000 things. We're not going to really pay much attention to it. And it's that same kind of phenomenon here where it's just, there's so much involved with it that you need specificity. The more specific we can get and the more real and tangible we can get with things like depression and abuse and the testing that a toxic kid has to do to actually exist, like that, you need to be able to follow through with it.
Yeah, and guardrails and parameters, right? Like some of the things that I say quite frequently are mental illness can and should be overcome. It's at the top of our podcast. It's our intro every time. Mental illness can and should be overcome. It's just like physical illness. Some are more longer lasting than others, but it's all very individualized. Therefore, a blanket policy isn't going to capture that. And not to mention my field is just just in disarray right now. Like we are too busy turf waring and worrying about state lines and telehealth. And it's like, we don't even know what diagnoses are. Everything's becoming spectrumized. Insurance companies are screwing it all up. There's no preventative care that gets reimbursed. Like, it's terrible.
As an outsider looking at the field, because I have the opportunity with the speaking that I do. I go regularly to behavioral threat analysis conferences. I speak to the FBI. I speak to Secret Service. I've even went to Quantico and spoken there. Like I've gone to the top level federal agencies, the middle level state level agencies, the counseling centers, and what I see is a phenomenon where we have a lot of helpers that want to help, but they're hitting the I guess omnipresent phenomenon of the field where everybody's a hammer and they think that the thing they're looking at is a nail. And so they want to be able to solve their problem, and they think that their one specialization can do it. And they don't want to look at the entirety of what they're dealing with. And so what I think my place in this equation is I get to be the decoder ring for the depressed kid. I get to be the one that tells you guys what it's like to be the end user of your product and how hard it is for that kid to reach out to get help. Do you mind if I have a little bit of rant on that? But I think you might like this. So
yeah, no, please. I mean, your show, man.
so if you are that kid reaching out to get help, let's say you are me at 15 years old, and you're trying to go to that social services office. You're trying to go to the counseling office. You're trying to reach out to get help. Your parents in the middle of a crack binge. You're living in the hell that I was living in. All right. If you are that kid trying to get help, you have to do some internal math. First off, first math you do is, does this help or does this help hurt? Because most of the help that says it helps actually hurts.
Yep.
And so I have to determine whether or not you're full of crap. But I don't have any easy way to do that. There's no bumper sticker or no label that's going to tell me whether or not you actually help or you hurt. So I have to go through an equation itself to be able to do that. So I'm going to test you. All right. You say you can handle me. How honest with you can I be about the hell of my real existence before you change your opinion of me? How honest with you can I be about the reality of what I'm living through before you judge me for it? And so I am going to test you. Okay, you say you can take me. I'm going to go to a 2. You take me out of 2? Okay, cool. How about out of 4? Take me out of 4? All right. How about out of 7? Because I live at 10. That's where I wake up every day, as a 10. So if you're leaving at 7, then leave now. There's no reason for you to even be here. So you could take me out of 10. All right, cool. How about a 12? How about a 15? Because I need to make sure you're going to stick around. So how about a 15 tomorrow? How about a 15 next week? Because if you're leaving at 13, I hit that regularly, dude. So I wake up at a 10. I'm going to hit a 13 every day. So if you're leaving there, then bounce now. But if you can take a 15 next week, maybe then I can drop back down to a 12. Then I can go back down to a 10. Next thing you know, I'm bringing my friends to you because you're the trusted adult. And you're the one that that will listen to me and see the real me and not just the pain that I'm showing you. And that phenomenon happens. When that happens, that's how you end up with entire robust school systems that think that they have this robust menu of options of help and systems and layouts and programs, and nobody knows anything. But the choir teacher's assistant knows everything about what's going on with those kids, because for just a second they got to be real and to be respected as a human. And so that person knows all of it because he's actually listening, and he could be trusted.
I mean, from your lips to God's ears, man, because, and again, I'll walk this tangent with you for a little bit. I have a different criticism. It's the same, but it's a different angle. My view is, and I participated in this, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm just rethinking it. I helped pioneer school-based mental health in Northern Nevada for the last 10 years. And now I'm looking back and I'm going, I don't know that I actually helped. Because what I think happened is, now that we've got these systems in place, they're identifying problems that are not problems. They're pathologizing normal childhood development and referring into systems of care solely to justify the existence of the services they put into practice. And to remove them is verboten, because you can't pull mental health from the school, right? So now we've got a cultural narrative that says, you're not allowed to remove services once they're in place, but nobody's stopping to ask if they're necessary or, and here's the big one, what's the goal? What's
Well,
the measurable, demonstrable goal with signs of suicide screening every year for every kid from 5th grade through 12th?
mm-hmm,
Was there a problem? What
mm-hmm.
is this
Well,
solution seeking to solve, right?
so
Like, did we
there's
have a
another
big
facet.
problem before? And has it
There's
moved
another
since then?
facet for you to consider with that too, and this is something that I noticed with the speaking, is that the helpers themselves have a problem with accessing the help.
Always.
Here's the line that I say, because again, with everybody thinks that they're a hammer, so they want to be a nail, and they want to justify the existence of their programs, so they're over analyzing and over diagnosing, and I completely agree. But on an interpersonal level, they dismiss that because they know it's not worthwhile. So the example I use is, okay, you got a kid in your school who's coming to you, and he's self-harming, and he's depressed, and he says that he's got abuse at home. You're probably going to give him a program. You're going to give him a checklist. You're going to give him a workbook. You're going to give him meetings to go to. You're going to give him a counseling system. You're going to give him all these things to check in with his progress and everything that he does. All right. And all those are probably worthwhile, and they've probably been worked through and workshopped, and they have reasons why they exist. All right. But let's take another scenario. Let's say you're sitting at a bar with your buddy who's been on the force with you for the last 10 years, and you both have seen some shit, and you're sitting at that bar, and he turns to you and says, "Man, I'm really having it today. My head is just killing me. I don't know what's going on. These voices, I just feel like that darkness is just taking me over." Do you give him your checklist? Do you give him your workbook? Do you give him your 12 steps? No, you don't. You sit next to him and you say, "All right, dude, I'm with you. I'm here with you. I understand. I feel your pain. You're not alone in this. We can make it through it." Now, what are the difference in those two situations? The only difference between person A and person B is that you know more about person B and you care more about person B. And that's it. That's the only difference between the two. So if the only difference between the two is you know more about that one and you care more about that one, and he's getting the actual care and the attention that you need to give to a human, then maybe learn more and care more about the first one.
Right. And these days, and not to apologize for this, the individuals, these days, teachers are asked, just like cops actually, to put more on their belt and do less with what their primary job is. Once upon a time, and you and I are old enough to remember this, our teachers did know about us, and they didn't overshare their own lives, right? Everything was veiled, but they put their heart and soul into the students so they could show up, and it wasn't just workbook and dismiss because of liability, perceived liability, something, who knows? But
no, I completely, I put 99% of the fault on the administrative process that we built up and the structure that we put in place. But you know what gives me hope in this situation, though? And you might be old enough to remember. You remember the TV show The Honeymooners?
Yeah, I never watched it, but yeah, I know what.
But you know the existence of it. You remember the main joke from The Honeymooners? You remember what the main laugh line was from it? It was, "One of these days, Alice, bang zoom, right and kiss her. To the moon, Alice." All right. That was the first sitcom that we laughed at as a society. That was the first major hit show in America. And the main joke of that show is he's going to punch his wife in the face because she talks too much.
Yes.
And it wasn't even that he's going to reach the point and get there, is that he was always at that point, and she was constantly in danger of getting punched. And that was the joke that we all thought was hilarious. We all laughed at that so much it was uproarious. And when I'm growing up, I'm bouncing from battered woman shelter to battered woman shelter to battered woman shelter, running from my violent father. Why do battered woman shelters exist?
Because women get battered?
Battered woman shelters exist so that women have a place to run so the man can keep the house. Because if it was really getting addressed, the man would be getting arrested.
Yes.
The woman wouldn't have to run.
Yep. Good point.
And the whole time I'm running from state to state, running away from my father, he got to stay home.
Yep.
And so as a society, we've moved from a place where domestic violence wasn't just ignored, it was ridiculed. And to now where abuse is actually getting noticed and mental health for men especially is getting paid more attention to. So it gives me hope that maybe we're progressing as a culture. But I think one of the biggest vestiges of that problem is what's happening in the education system and the counseling system, where we have all these structures built in place to the adults have indemnified themselves out of effectiveness.
Yes.
They have put up so many rules and restrictions in place that walking into going to get counseling for the kid is like walking into a room full of spikes that are pointed at my own head. And I don't even know what I'm going to say. They're going to cause the jaws of death to snap down and bite my head off. Because you have so many laws and mandatory reporting lines that you have like tripwires set up that it completely negates the ability for me to engage on a real level to actually get help.
So it's funny. Here's the funny thing. We don't. We really don't. The mandatory reporting laws are very tightly defined. So like the Tarasoff law, you have to hit like 5 prongs in order to report, to break confidentiality in your report. It's got to be like identifiable, immediately actionable. It's
so do you think it's more of just like a over exuberance? People just
no. Here's what's happening. So for the listening audience and the lay folks who don't understand how graduate school and counseling works, they terrify us that there are lawsuits lurking around every corner for every little misstep we'll ever take, to the point that we just don't take any risks. We don't challenge people. We don't push them into discomfort, because discomfort, while required for growth, by the way, discomfort is required for growth. Discomfort is by definition not fun. It's not pleasant. But here's what's happened. They've taken the discomfort and turned it into pain, which, yeah, sure it is, but then you grow through it. Pain, therefore, is harm. See the difference there? And then harm is tantamount to abuse. So if I, as a counselor, or if I, as a counselor supervisor to one of my students or interns, push somebody too far ideologically out of their comfort zone to entertain some new way of treatment or whatever, I almost invariably get accused of harm leading to abuse. I'm an abusive supervisor. I'm an abusive counselor. So what they've done in grad school is they've told everybody there's lawsuits lurking around every corner. Don't be on social media. Don't be on podcasts. Don't publish anything. Don't write articles. Don't even present at conferences. Don't have all the things. No. I was told, Aaron, I was told that having a business card is tantamount to solicitation, which is an ethical breach. I'm like, you can't make this stuff up. And here's the crazy thing. I just had a conversation 2 weeks ago with a student who said it's still ongoing. He got told the same thing. Do not go into public and talk, because you could, check this out, you could inadvertently, quote unquote, treat without consent, and therefore be sued if somebody in the audience at this talk that you're giving or whatever, this seminar, listens to what you say, applies it, it doesn't work, they get angry, they can come sue you for treatment without consent. I'm like, that's not even a thing, but that's going through the heads of the grad students, and then they come out and they're skittish and terrified. So they're just ineffectual. That's what's happening. So I'm out here with multiple podcasts and a YouTube channel, and I'm on social media, and it makes my professors' heads roll off their shoulders. So yes, your point is well taken, that, and this is for gun owners too. The gun owners all listening to this, they think the same thing. They're going to walk in, and I've got some batphone.gov that I'm going to pick up and tattle on them, and the authorities are going to come knock on their door and take their guns for having anxiety. And it's like, no, it's not like that. However, because we've been trained to look out for every little thing and be on point and on call and on duty to report every little thing, there is a real actual fear. I am the anomaly. There are very few of us who read the law and stay within it.
So my phrase is actually way more on point than I thought. The adults really have indemnified themselves out of effectiveness.
Yep.
Wow.
Yes. This is why mental illness in this country keeps getting worse, even though service provision keeps increasing.
So I have another phenomenon that I've noticed, and I'm an outsider. So any professionals listening to this, if this is wrong, I remember I'm a dude that works at Lowe's or and was managing a gas station before that. I'm doing this because I have the urge and the story. I don't have the education and military background, so if I'm off base, remember that. But looking at it from the outside, what I have seen is it's really difficult for the people at the top levels of giving help to get help themselves, because if you are a special agent, and let's say you are a FBI agent who's been working high value targets or whatever, if you go to a counseling office and you go get help for your own depression, now it's looked at as a liability and a negative spot mark, and you can get removed from your assignments, you can get removed from your duties, and 5 years down the line, if they found out you can get still removed then. You can get looked at as a demerit. And how can we expect the people who are carrying the worst of the worst of humanity and carrying the worst black that we can produce to then not look down at everybody else underneath them like they're a threat or a monster if they don't have any way to release any of that darkness off their heads? Like, it just doesn't, doesn't compute to me. And I have literally had, without breaking any confidentiality, because I would never, these people are some of my best friends and I treasure their contacts, but I have had federal agents with badges and guns who have seen intense things break down and cry to me in a private setting because they finally have somebody that when they tell their stories to, it's not going to destroy their world.
I don't like to complain without offering a solution. And the solution is we change that culture, right? And it's happening. Admittedly, it's happening. I can testify to the law enforcement agencies in my own area. They're starting to change the culture. DOD is trying to change it within the military culture. It's like turning an aircraft carrier, not a speedboat, but they're trying, right? They're not trying
like
well enough.
It's more of a cultural. Yeah, it seemed like it wasn't necessarily process. It was more cultural because the procedures seem to be there. Like it seems like there are systems in place to access that help, but it's the long-standing culture of being the strong alpha man.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest analogies I've ever heard was actually from somebody else's patient. One of my old colleagues who's since moved on. The patient said, when I was in the military, he was an Army guy, I think. He says, when we would go on a ruck, we were commanded that if you turn your ankle, you let us know. Let the command staff know, because if you go too long on that rolled ankle, you become a liability to the entire unit. And it's the same thing with mental health. If you know that you're breaking down, you'd better tell somebody, because you become a liability to everybody else. This whole like keep up appearances to be a tough guy thing doesn't work. So that's part of the culture that needs to change. But there's also the mechanical part where DOD is still publishing protocols and matrices for how to report certain things and clearances and whatnot based on F codes. Like if you have this diagnosis, then it's more severe than this other diagnosis. And it's like, who made that up? Where on earth did you decide to rank hierarchical order the certain diagnoses over others? And by the way, who's asking? And by the way, who's reporting? And by the way, how long does it stay there? And by the way, when do you know that it's concluded? Right? I don't. That is contributing to the overall culture of like, oh, bipolar. That's way worse than generalized anxiety disorder. It's like, not always. Not always. So that's part of it too. But
that's a phenomenon I hadn't really even considered. On a ground level, I always try to fight against that just in conversation. I'm never a fan of comparative pain. I get that a lot. People coming to me because my story seems a bit outlandish and it has extreme elements in it, and people are like, "Oh my God, I went through stuff, but nothing like that." And I always tell them like, "Look, just because your details didn't match my details doesn't mean it didn't affect you as much as it affected me. Like your life has affected you the same way my life has affected me. And the scale, I don't like comparing scales of pain."
No.
Yeah.
Well, and so we can gently nudge this back on track here for the podcast and set her back on you, so we're not ranting about systemic deficiencies. But one of the things I say is that as I reach over and grab my big DSM-5, which this is the fifth text. This is DSM-5 text revision, and they keep getting bigger. This is now 1,050 pages, and I happen to have a DSM-2 at home. It's 114, I believe. So,
oh wow,
it's grown tenfold. But here's the thing: I view that, and this is somewhat unorthodox and controversial. I view everything in the DSM as a symptom, not a problem. I view all the symptoms the same. Are there more extreme symptoms? I don't know. That's a subjective interpretation. But I see them all as a symptom, not a problem. And I think that they're individualized based on the individual's response to environment, such that they're going to dive one way or another based on how their culture created them, right? You emerged pretty well. And I'm curious to get into that story. Some people don't. Now, as far as the comparison of experience, I don't like experiential comparison either because of all the stuff you just listed. But also, our own resilience training will tell us how to deal with something versus another thing anyway. So two people see the same thing, they will react differently. So you can't you can't compare the experience. I know people who are crippled emotionally because they were emotionally neglected or invalidated, but they never experienced physical abuse. They never experienced violence. They never experienced drug addiction. In fact, the whole family was sober, right? But what they did experience was emotional isolation, which is just as detrimental. So you can't
Yep.
you can't compare experiences and say yours was quote unquote worse than mine. That's a human element. It's a fallacy. Don't go there.
Yep.
But to that degree, I want to make sure I'm asking Mike's question because he dipped out, and I promised him I'd ask this. Your mother and father, we know your father's story because he went to Vietnam and became very changed. Your mother must have also incurred some level of abuse or trauma because people typically don't tolerate that level of abuse or trauma unless they've been acclimated to it over
Yep.
time. And you shared something while we were experiencing our technical difficulties, and I'm going to ask you to share that again because I think the audience needs to know for context how people end up in situations like this where they don't just leave, right? Or they don't just fight back. Go.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and first, my father, he actually had some abuse as well. My birth father, even before the Vietnam thing, when he was circumcised at 15 years old because his parents caught him masturbating.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's
that alone,
substantial.
Pretty substantial. And so that alone, he went through some stuff there too. But my mom, so the abuse that she went through, the pedophiles of the earlier generations had run through pretty severely in the family. So there was the sexual abuse from my great grandfather, who his name was Pappy, and he abused all the women of that generation. Including my grandmother, my mom, my aunts, everybody in that side. But then also it was just kind of the toxicity of the family runs really deep. Like the thing that I mentioned to you before about the abuse of how deep it went. My grandparents moved from Mississippi to Oregon in 1965. And I didn't really piece that together until my teen years about the significance of that. But first off, think what was happening in Mississippi in 1965. It was the heart of the civil rights movement. It was the heart of Black people getting rights and becoming full citizens, all of that. Like being able to be acknowledged as the humans that they've always been, that finally happening in 65. And then they moved from there to Oregon. And Oregon was virtually, I don't want to say entirely because there might have been one or two, but it was made as a whites only state. It was made as a white enclave. And until the late 70s, it wasn't really socially acceptable for Black people to live in Oregon. It just wasn't. The place was made as for white settlers to go live. And so they moved from a extremely racist time where civil rights is trying to take hold to a extremely racist state. And I didn't really piece that together till I was 16 and I brought home a Black girlfriend and my grandfather threatened to disown me. And I was not even 16, I was 14. 14, brought home a Black girlfriend and my grandfather threatened to disown me. And so that was that abuse and dismissal of emotions and toxicity goes deep. I also think my mom suffered, I know she suffered greatly at the hands of my birth father, like vicious, violent. Me and my brother were forced to watch her get beaten and raped in front of us. The degradation my father put her through, but then also my stepdad, but then also herself. I think the lack of, she kind of gave up early on from up until she was with my stepdad. She was very survivalistic, very, very formidable. She was like Linda Hamilton from Terminator 2. Like she was the survivalistic mom that could kill anybody coming at you and take down all comers. Like she was a strong, fierce woman. But then once the crack binge hit, all that just got wiped completely out. And by the time she died just 5 months ago, she died alone in a hotel on Colfax here in Denver after she had been in a drug binge for years. And last time I spoke with her, I hadn't spoken with her since I came out with my story. Last time I talked with my mom, I had just left a live television show appearance here in Denver. It was my first time on live TV, this TV show Daily Blast Live. So I went out there, did that. That was really cool. They sent me home in a limo, first time riding in a limo. So that was really fun. And then I got a phone call from the guy for the TEDx talk that I had applied for, that yes, I could do my TED talk. So I get approved to do my TED talk, riding in the limo from my first TV show appearance, flying high on this weird semi-celebrity thing. Then I get a phone call from my mom, who had seen me live on TV. And she said I was a worthless piece of crap and I should kill myself. And that was the last time I spoke to my mom.
For outing the family secret, was that it?
Uh-huh. Yeah. The only time, so out of the messages that I got, so when I first came out with my story, I wrote a Facebook post that went Facebook viral, and it was the day after the Stoneman Douglas shooting. We were watching the shooting or watching the news coverage afterwards. Me and my wife and my oldest daughter having this tearful discussion about how could someone ever get to that point? How could you ever have this happen? So I went to the toilet and sat down, wrote a Facebook post, as we all do. And that's the first time I ever came out with I was almost a school shooter. And
they didn't know either, huh?
They didn't know anything. Nobody.
Wow.
Nobody knew. Not even Mike and Amber. They didn't know. And so I came out, I wrote that, and I didn't do it like to come out as a story. Like it was just going to be a Facebook post. I thought it was going to disappear into the ether like everything else on social media. And so when I came out of the bathroom, my family had read it. And so that was like opening up about Dad Day. My daughter only knew about 20% of my history. My wife only knew about 60% of my history. So I had to fully ask me any question you want. We're going to deep dive into Dad. I'll tell you everything you want to know about me. And
how old was your daughter at that point?
She was 18. Yep.
Okay.
And so the next day, my local news reporter here, Kyle Clark in Denver, was asking for submissions about how the recent shooting made you feel, because shootings are really personal here in Colorado. We've had Aurora and Columbine, and so the city really takes it really personally. And so they were asking for submissions to read on air. And my wife was like, hey, maybe he would like your Facebook post. And so I sent it to him thinking that maximum that would be like a small text blurb, like he would show the text thing and it would disappear into the ether. And instead, they sent a camera crew to my house to film me reading that Facebook post. And that video got 17 million views in a week.
Wow.
And I went overnight from thinking that if anybody ever found this out about me, they would hate me. And I felt like it was like a millstone around my neck, this big black mark, to getting messages from all over the planet. Literally every country I can name: England, Sweden, Australia, New Zealand, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, everywhere. That was an outpouring of the diaries of pain from everywhere across the world. And it was messages that weren't just, hey, that was cool. It was, hey, that was cool. And here's all the pain I ever went through. And here's everything I ever experienced. And it was utterly profound. I saw just how alike we all are if we strip away all of the societal barriers and all of the cultural differences and all the different foods we eat and the music we listen to and the religions we like. If we strip it down to the base fundamental human emotions that we all feel, every human on the planet feels, we are way more alike than we are different. And I started getting thousands and thousands and thousands of these messages, up to now over 30,000 messages from all over the globe. And out of that, let me take a quick guess. Out of 30,000 messages, how many do you think were negative? I mean, like direct negative comments to me, not some random keyboard warrior in the comment section, but took the time to message me personally and send me a negative message. How many of those do you think were negative?
That's funny. I was going to ask that question. I'm going to say fewer than 10.
10.
Oh, wow.
10 messages. 10 messages out of 30,000. 10. 5 of those were blood related to me.
Huh. And the other 5?
Because the other 5 were just randoms. 5 people took it upon themselves. And here's the funny thing. The negatives are never about the material. It's always about me being fat.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It was personal attacks. And so it was completely, I just ignored them. But the ones who related to me, they get mad, not because I'm talking about something, not because I'm not saying something that's the truth, because I am saying something that's the truth, and they don't want to face up to it. So they're mad that I'm airing dirty laundry in public, and how dare I talk bad about the family. And my response from the very beginning has been, I'll stop the instant you tell me one thing I'm saying that's not the truth. And if you're mad about me talking about the reality of what happened when I was 30 years ago, then you're not paying attention to the man I am today, and I'm not the one that has a problem.
Good on you. You highlight something there that I actually got denigrated for in graduate school in our multicultural class, because I dared say that we're probably, while it's nice to acknowledge people's culture, we're probably missing the point when we don't see through the outward behavioral presentation into the soul of a human being, which is something I proudly steal from Christian Conti, who's a longtime friend and mentor. We have a Christian Conti drinking game around here, because every time we mention him, I take a drink. But I'm out of my protein shake. But I actually got accused of, all the things, imperialism and white supremacy and patriarchy, blah blah blah. And to hear you say that you got all those messages from around the world, and that's been my experience since, also, because the other podcast I host is an international podcast. It's like, no, we quite are similar. And to your point about the kid sitting in front of the therapist, testing the therapist, if I can continue to see through the attacks and realize that's not about me, and see the soul of this human being sitting in front of me with all its limitless capacity and potential, that's how you make authentic connection. You do it through emotional functioning, not experience. And what is culture but experience, right? So while we want to be sensitive to people's culture, yours was poverty and violence, right? And I actually brought that up in class. I said, well, poverty, because I happen to be working in the rural Nevada areas and working with people in poverty, dirt floors and that kind of thing. And I said, well, poverty is a culture. How come we're only talking about race, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender? And they're like, well, that's a privileged position, right? It's like, no. This is actually legit. Like, why is poverty not in the book? That's a culture. Guns is a culture, right? There's a culture of firearms people, and it's as diverse as it gets.
I think that your point is way very profound in the fact that I think that poverty might be a more overlying culture than the other cultures, because if you take those Venn diagrams of cultural experience, poverty and wealth and
class
and even in the class section, because class gets a bit iffy, because I understand the distinction there between the wealth and the poverty, as that is a class distinction, but in the different stratifications of those, you also have stratification of class within itself too.
Correct.
So in the poverty area, you have a realm of poverty cultures, let's say.
Yes.
And the hierarchy thereof. So like you have crackhead culture. Crackhead culture is vastly different than like hoarder culture, because hoarder culture is its own thing. And it's but in that world, that's all under that poverty culture umbrella. And again, it may be a bit splitting hairs with the distinction, but I completely agree that looking at it through those areas, to me, is much more beneficial than looking at like where you were born and what foods you ate and what music you listened to, because that to me is all those areas of cultural distinction, the where you got talked about for cultural appropriation or dismissal or all that, yada yada. All those areas to me are all distractionary, because that's just the fun stuff we like to do as people. Everybody likes to do fun stuff, and certain people like to do fun stuff together. So that group of people does fun stuff together that way, and that group of people does fun stuff together that way. But if you stop the fun stuff and everybody's sitting there for a second being a human without their fun stuff next to them, they still have the emotions inside, and all the emotions are universal and omnipresent, where we all feel pain, worthless, happy, sad. We have these emotions regardless of our cultural interpretations, and regardless of the food and music that we've been consuming and the religion that we have. We still have these emotions. And that's why some cultures choose to want to repress certain elements because they want to shape their culture that way, or enhance certain emotions because they want to go that way. But they're dealing with the clay that is the omnipresent, universal, the human reality that we have these emotions.
Yeah, and I want to jump in there, because one of those things that you touched on, the emotional functioning, is one of my bailiwicks, and the core emotion that you were experiencing, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, that you were experiencing when you were down in such a low position that you were going to take lives, including your own, is shame. When you live in shame, as Christian Conti says, you tend to act out of shame. And if you think you're a no good piece of nothing, then why not hurt others? Because it doesn't matter. You elucidated that quite well in your, the first part of this podcast.
I would say yes, but in a way that you might not expect. What happens with shame when you accept it?
Well, okay. So neurologically, I would say shame's design is to tell us we fail to meet somebody's expectations, even our own. Guilt then immediately kicks in, which is a different emotion, and says, go fix it. But if you can't fix it, you're dwelling in it. So that my take would say, if you embrace shame, you say, all right, we failed. Let's move on.
Well, so,
but I don't know what you're going to say.
But here's a different, because it's slightly deeper than that for it. So when you accept that you are shameful and that you deserve it, and then that is the positive. When you hate yourself so much that your goal is to get everybody else to agree with you. So it wasn't shame. It wasn't shame per se. Right. It was shame does fit, because shame would be, from looking from the outside, that would fit the classification. But from the inside, there wasn't shame or embarrassment. It was ownership and acceptance of the reality that shame was honest. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like
it
was seeing that while people would be ashamed to have done this bad thing, I did the bad thing and I am the bad thing. And so the shame doesn't really come into play, because I don't feel bad that it happened, and I'm not trying to make up for it at all or being judged by anybody else. I'm not trying to go against someone. I don't feel that someone else is judging me because I failed. I'm accepting that I'm a failure.
It becomes a characterological trait.
Yeah. And once you hit that point, that's where the real danger lies. Once you accept that you're the failure, and once you've internalized it to the point where then the dynamic shifts, then the people coming at you to say that you're the good person, they're the wrong ones. If you tell me that I'm the good and I'm worthwhile, then obviously that you're full of crap, because you don't see the real me that I am, and you don't understand. Because if you saw who I really am, you'd see the monster.
Okay, what clicked then? What shifted that? Because something shifted that, and you stopped believing that.
Yeah, so here, and that's a good point to go back to the story that I was going to tell when we had that technical difficulty. So the initial part of my story was between 16 and 17. Okay, that leading up to that, going to get to Mike's house, almost getting the gun, staying at Mike's house for a week, never getting the gun. That ended up between 16 and 17. Okay, now we're going to fast forward slightly from that to the night of my 19th birthday. Okay, the night of my 19th birthday, I'm planning on committing suicide, and I'm planning on doing it by overdose. I was tired of being the burden. I had people intervene in the past. I had Mike intervene and stuff in the past. Was tired of that, but I wanted to end my life, because while Mike gave me a frame shift, it didn't change the life. My hell at home was still the same. The chaos was still the same. The family was still the same. All of that stuff was still there. I had just had a spot where I was able to set my feet on the ground and take a breath. And it really was like rolling the clock back on, and like the waves receded. So while almost immediately after that time at Mike's house, I got depressed and ashamed and remorseful of what I had planned, but it was at a normal level. Like the depression went inward instead of outward. Instead of being aggressive towards anybody else, I want to shoot everybody up. And instead it went depressed and inward and ashamed. But it was a normal base level, because again, the waves had receded, and now I had that moment of clarity. I was able to take a breath as a regular person. I wasn't lost in that chaotic swirl that I was in before.
Well, how are you able? Hold on a second. How are you able to endure the next 2 years then, if the circumstances didn't change?
The chaos at home kept on spinning up, so I wasn't really. Instead, it just went. The emotions, instead of going outward, were going inward. So leading up to my 19th birthday, they had scaled back up again, and now I want to kill myself, because I'm back in that kind of tsunami. But it was more, I was ashamed. I was really tired of being the burden and problem everybody was fixing. That was I was the thing that was having to be the burden everybody else was having to deal with, and I was tired of that all the way around. And I was just ready to be done with it. And so I was planning on overdosing the night of my 19th birthday. And I was going to do it I stole a giant bottle of pills from my mom, stole a big bag of cocaine from my mom, and I got a hold of about 30 hits of LSD off the streets. So I had copious amounts of narcotics, way more than were going to be needed to do the job. And my goal was to have a day as normal as I possibly could, be as normal as I can be, and then go to that field behind Casa Bonita and end my life. I didn't want to have any interventions. I didn't want to have anybody notice me. I wanted to just disappear. Okay. And so in the daytime, I went to Mike's house because I wanted to have a regular day. And I want to spend it with my favorite people. So I went to Mike's house. Now, Mike is a social creature himself. He has a social circle. And he was going to art school at the time. And one of his friends was a girl named Amber. And they weren't dating or anything. They were just buddies. But we would go over to Amber's house every now and then and watch movies, listen to music, hang out. And so when I got to Mike's house, he's like, hey, we're going to kick it at Amber's today. I'm like, right on. That's a great plan. I'm going to go spend it with two of my favorite people, have a great last day. Then I'm going to go back to that field behind Casa Bonita and end my life. And that was the plan. And so we get there, and that wasn't what I walked into at all. I walked into a surprise birthday party for me. I walked into about 14 people singing happy birthday. Amber had baked a blueberry peach pie. There was a bunch of decorations put up. And so I walked past her and I dropped all the drugs in the toilet. And that was the last time I ever tried to kill myself. But you know what's really great about that story is that when we left Mike's house, there was no party for me. We left Mike's house and Mike called ahead, said, hey, I got Aaron in the car. It's his birthday today. And Amber already had the friends over. They had already baked a blueberry peach pie, but they're a bunch of artists. So they threw together some decorations really quick in about 5 minutes time and threw up a bunch of decorations all over the house. So I walked in to a fundamentally life-changing experience that altered me to the very core of my existence that my friend put up in 5 minutes because her buddy was having a birthday. And she's still my best friend. She was at that dinner party the other day. Like just this last weekend, we all went and had dinner at Mike's house. He made homemade wood-fired pizzas, and Amber was there too. And that you never know what simple compassion and kindness would do. And again, if you ask Amber didn't know until I came out with my story what she did and the impact that she had. Until 2018, she didn't know that she had saved my life.
Did that change your relationship now as adults?
Yeah. Nowadays, well, it just made it deeper and better. I actually had the honor I got to give my second TED Talk a couple months ago. And in that, I told that story. And I had the honor of bringing her up on stage and thanking her on the TED Talk. And so I actually got to bring her up, thank her publicly. And she even brought me a blueberry peach pie to the event. So it was cool. Awesome. I got to bring her and her mom there. So yeah, it was fun. So yeah, that then started me on a process. Okay. So that was like the first light coming in, like finally seeing that maybe I'm worth more than I think I am. And maybe there's more to this than I can maybe I can do more with life than just be the bottom of crap and be the stuff that's scraped off your shoe. That maybe I'm not seeing myself correctly. And that was the first sign of that. Okay. So that then started this process. About 6 months after that, at the time, I'm working, my mom is managing a Veterans of Foreign Wars bar in Denver. And again, she's my mom. So even though we didn't get along, we fought constantly, all the abuse, she's still my mom. How are you going to get away from that? It's a mom. I didn't get fully her hooks out of me till my mid 30s. And so she was working at a Veterans of Foreign Wars bar. I had got a job there as a bartender. And so one night we're standing there working, it's Friday night, and my family's on the other side of the bar, and my aunt's there. And she's one of the ones who smoked crack in front of me. She tried to molest me when I was younger. All terrible, terrible things. And she's standing there on the side of the bar. And offhand, she's in the middle of a conversation. She says, "Oh, Aaron, you know you love me." And I just stopped and said, "No, I don't." And I didn't mean to say that. It just came out of me. And I said, "No, I don't." She said, "What?" I said, "No, I don't actually love you. You tried to molest me. You tried to kill yourself when you were younger. I don't actually love you, and I'm done." And she blew up. She started screaming, started yelling. To me, it just heard static. It was like white noise. And it was like an anvil jumped off my chest, like instant relief. And so I went home and I reassessed. I'm like, wow, that was something. Something really happened there. And so I decided I went on a process that I call acknowledgement, where I went to the people that hurt me and I told them my feelings. And I did it specifically. It was really important to not do it in a retaliatory way, to not do it in a way that said, you hurt me and you need to pay for it. And you caused me pain and now you need to deal with it. I didn't do any of that. It was, you hurt me, you abused me, our relationship has fundamentally changed. I don't actually love you and I'm done. And I would walk away. Had nothing to do with their response, had to do with getting it off of my chest. It had to do with getting it out of my heart to let them know how I feel. And so I did that. I went to my mom, I went to my brother, I went to my dad, I went to everywhere around and told them how I feel. And so now I can comfortably sit and say that I never have to worry about, man, I wish they knew how I felt about it. Like they all know. And they know I'll tell them again. You want to come and ask me about it? I'll tell you. And because I don't have any fear or ashamed about it. I think growing up, I lost the ability to be ashamed or embarrassed about anything, because I made more fun of myself than anybody around. I had more fat jokes about me than you did, and I had better insults than you did. And so now that I'm older, I don't have the ability to get embarrassed or ashamed about anything. If you don't like me, that's fine. Don't like me from the other side of the room, and I'll be all right with that. Like, you go stand over there, don't like me all day long.
I'm curious about that with a bunch of people who are, in that realm, addicted to chaos, causing harm constantly, that they all received the phone call and the meeting. Like, because I can easily see people just saying, no, I'm not interested in having your, stuff dumped into my lap, right? Like, why didn't they just reject you?
Yeah. It was I don't know why they didn't just reject me. Honestly, they're just the best people I've ever known. Yeah. I told Mike, and I've joked about it repeatedly, Mike's the only person
I
in the
meant your
world where
family
if you
members. I'm
insult him
sorry. I meant your family
okay.
members when you went to tell them how you feel. Like, I'm
why
amazed
didn't
that they
just
received
reject
the
me?
invitation.
Some did. Some rejected me. Some begged me to stay. Some begged me not to go. Some tried to like retaliate. Some but to me, it didn't matter. It didn't matter because I just didn't have it in me to change my story based on your abuse. I didn't have that in me. I still don't. I don't have it in me to censor what I'm saying for the people that hurt me.
That's a powerful statement that I think a lot of people need to hear, and I hope they do it. And I'm going to take that. I love doing these podcasts because I always learn things, and I always have my mind changed, and I'm always, shifting. Right, that right there. I'm not going to change my story because of your abuse. Like, that is so profound that so many injured people need to hear because they do self-censor, whether it's privately or publicly, whether it's occupationally or educationally. But like, we self-censor constantly out of a threat of, we don't really know, right? Like, we don't really know what the threat is. But if the threat isn't legitimate, or if it's not something that matters, doesn't hang in the balance, what are you doing? Like, you're living dishonestly, and you just chose not to live dishonestly anymore. And I appreciate the heck out of that. That's amazing.
And I really did decide to not live dishonestly. Like, these days, I just don't lie about stuff. I don't have it in me anymore. I spent too long. I am, because of my upbringing and my family, I am really, really good at lying. I'm really, really good at manipulating. I'm really good at getting what I want because it was a survival technique. Because I had to get what I wanted to survive, and I had to make sure I knew who I could use to get the thing that I wanted, because I might not be able to get it tomorrow, and I need to make sure I could survive right now. Okay. And when I got with my wife, the most important thing to do when I met with my wife 15 years ago was to show her all of my tricks. Like, all right, these are the things that I had to do to survive. These are all of my tricks. These are all of the things that I would do to lie. You ever see any of this, you call it out immediately, because these are the red flags you might eventually hit. Because I had to do some crazy stuff to survive when I was a kid. And I had to pull tricks and lie and steal and do stuff to make it through life. And if you ever see any of this, you let me know. And I had to fully turn the table over, because that I saw firsthand the long-term effects of abuse, degradation, and lying, and what that can do to your person. I saw it in my mom and my stepdad, and the fact that they never left that chaos. They never took ownership of it. They never fixed it. They never left it, and it killed them. And I see it with my brother, who he tells me that he changed, but the brother I know was a wife-beating alcoholic. It took it. It ran with it. I won. I won in this equation because my son, my 18-year-old son, my third born, is about to graduate in 2 weeks from high school. All of my kids went to the same high school. My three oldest went to the same high school. My youngest went to a different one just because we found a better choir program for her, not because we had to move. And so they've all had the same stability. They went to the same elementary school, middle school, and high school. They all did. They have the ability to where if I do something wrong, they can come and yell at me about it and tell me that I'm wrong and correct me on stuff. And none of them will be able to do what I'm doing in 30 years. There's not going to be an Aaron Stark family business talking about their pain because it just isn't there. And so I won. Like they all that chaos, all that drama. Today, I can sit here and happily say I have beaten my own demons to the point where I can sit comfortably in myself, knowing that even though I did make really terrible decisions and I really did maladapt to those decisions when I was a teenager, I don't have to use that. That doesn't have to be me for the rest of my life. My bad decisions and my pain don't have to define my entire existence. I can choose to move out of it and move past it. And what the imagery that I use when I talk about with my own kids is luggage. The past is like luggage. You can carry around your luggage with you, and you can drag your bag behind your back, and you can have it drag on the ground, and the handle will break off, and the latch will pop open, and your shirt will spill all over the ground, and you got to turn around and pick up all your luggage again. It's going to make your arms tired. It's going to make the ground scrape, all that stuff. Or you can set your bag down. You can walk away. That doesn't mean you're leaving it around. You can turn around and grab a shirt if you want to grab a shirt. It's sitting right there. But you don't have to carry it with you all day long, every day. You don't have to be your pain. You can be who you are and change and shift. The only thing we really are is change. The only thing constant in life is change. The only thing certain is that tomorrow is going to be different than today. It might not be better and it might not be worse, but it will be different than today. So I have a choice. I can either choose to resist that change and get beaten down by that change and turned into rocks on the beach and just worn down like pebbles, or I can adapt with that change and turn into the water itself and shift and move with the world. So I choose to be the change.
I know a little bit about what public accountability does to hold you honest, right? But until 2018, you didn't necessarily have that. How often prior to then or since then do you still, because you front loaded your wife, right? How
Uh-huh.
often do you still have the temptations to cheat, manipulate, cut corners?
I don't anymore because these days here's the coolest thing what's happened to my world. Here's the light that I see these days and why it's so profound and so deep ingrained in me now. I spent 35 years. Okay, I'm 46 now, so 38 years. I spent 38 years being probably the smartest guy in the group that I was in because I read a lot and I knew a lot of stuff. So I always thought I was the smartest guy. I could have a better insult and a better quick comeback, and I could make a trollish comment. I could be a big fish in that little tiny pond. Okay, I could be a smart guy in that little tiny pond, and it didn't get me anywhere. It didn't do anything for me. It just made me hate myself because I was lying constantly, and I was constantly having to hold up all these different manipulations and living with the shit that my family went through, and all of that stuff that compounded onto it. Okay, and when I finally came out with my story, I believe I experienced what is ego death. I had to completely let go of everything that I was and reassess all of my personality from the bare bottom. I had to become to grips with the fact that I'm being seen by millions across the world about my most deep and personal story possible. And then I'm going to go in front of groups of strangers, and with no net, I don't have any slides. I don't have anything but me and a microphone. I get up there and I tell them my story, and then I take live questions from the audience and let them poke and prod and peel back the scabs and poke there some more and try to get deeper into it. And every single time I do it, I cry. Every single time I do it. And so I do that because that the power that comes from that has shown me that the honesty is really the only way to go. The once that transformation happened and I had that ego death and I was able to establish with who I am, I realized that the more honest and real I am, the more impactful, real, and tangible my entire world is. I not only in the weird celebrity-ish thing where I'm helping people across the world and I get to tell people and I get real stories from them and help counseling, and that's all really fantastic. But on a more grounded human level, on a base family level, being honest and real with your emotions makes everything else around you just get a lot easier. It makes everything go. You stop having to scaffold on lies. You stop having to double check your stories. I don't have to worry about, well, if I told you that story, was that really the true story? Do I have to lie about, was that someone else's story? No, if I told you something 3 weeks ago, that was the truth coming out of my head. And I'm going to tell you again now because it's the truth coming out of me. There's no reason for those lies and deception because the truth really has set me free. It truly has.
It's less taxing on the body for sure. Yeah.
Less taxing on the body. Well, and then to top it off, I also changed my entire physical sense the same time I came out with my story publicly, because in 2018, I was 500 pounds. I was 500 pounds.
Wow.
478 to be specific was my highest. And so I was 478 pounds. I had a really bad cellulitis infection in my leg to the point where I was chair ridden. They almost wanted to amputate my leg because of the infection. It was that bad. And I was so unhealthy, I had a heart attack at 38 years old. Okay. And I had to buy $1,000 motorized recliner chair to fit because I was breaking the couches that I was sitting on. And so I'm sitting in this chair at 38 years old. This is shortly before I came out with my story. Sitting in the chair at 38 years old, and I'm wallowing in depression as close to the depression back when I was a teenager as I've ever been. And I'm just sitting because I couldn't get out of the chair. I couldn't even clean myself. I had to have my son help me wipe myself. It was that bad. And so, and I'm depressed completely, thinking I'm worthless because now I don't even have any prospect of future because now my leg might be gone. And like, I'm all the way depressed. So I'm sitting there like wallowing. I just want to crawl into a hole and I just want to die. And my oldest daughter, the same one who I was having a conversation with, her name's Katie, and she's fantastic. My oldest daughter, she jumped up in front of me. She said, "No, you're not. You're going to get yourself better. You're going to fix yourself. You're going to be the dad I deserve because I need a dad and you're it. And you're going to be my dad and I need him right now. And you're going to make yourself better today." And I said, "Okay." And I did. And up until that very day, I was drinking a 12-pack of soda a day and having a 2-liter with my dinner as my cup. I haven't had a drop of soda in 8 years. I immediately went on a diet plan. I lost 100 pounds from weight loss just from diet. Then I went and had gastric sleeve surgery, lost another 100 pounds from gastric sleeve surgery. So now I'm right about 300 pounds because I need to lose another 20 because I've been eating too much after the holidays. But I lost an entire person of weight. And so, and I did it at the exact same time it came out with my story. So on stage of my first TED Talk, under my shirt are my weight loss surgery bandages. So like these days, I am absolutely invulnerable to insults, and I am invulnerable to that kind of criticism, because not only am I helping people across the world by being as honest and real as I possibly can be about my life, but I lost an entire person of weight. So you better get your game up. You want to insult me.
Do you have a spiritual faith?
I do not, but, and this is, so my wife is a believer. I'm very much an atheist. I've always been very much an atheist, very much science-minded. But we just recently had a cool kind of not come to Jesus meeting, a confluence of ideas where I think, and this is again small tangent. If you notice, I tangent a lot. I think that I've chanced upon a atheist description of what a soul might possibly be.
You're really committed to the atheism. Yeah, but yeah,
I am.
Let's hear it.
So an atom is a tiny nucleus surrounded by oscillating energy fields of various sizes of electrons.
Yes.
Okay. And if you scale that up to a size where we could see it, if the atom was the size of your car, or the nucleus was the size of your car, the oscillating energy fields could well be the size of the known universe because of how big scale-wise between the actual piece of matter at the bottom and the energy fields of the electrons surrounding it. All right. So if we are all stacks of atoms, which are 99% resident energy fields, then that stands to feel meant that we are 99% resident energy fields, because that's how the maths out. Now, if you take some physics into that fact, And the only thing that makes my hand, if I slap my hand on a table, that makes my hand not be able to pass through that table is the different vibrations of the atoms of my hand and that table. Those are the vibrational frequency of the two causes a friction that makes the atoms not be able to penetrate on an electronic level. They can't move past the electrons barrier. Okay. I can't remember I'm using the wrong term for electron barrier, but the same scientific thing applies. There's a barrier that happens. Think of the Leidenfrost field, but again, it could be wrong.
So not mass per se blocks the hand. It's the space
the
between
energy, the space between the atoms, and they vibrate at different levels, and so they can't interact. And we know this scientifically because if we can precisely match the vibrational frequencies of things, we can make them pass through each other. They've done that in laboratories. They vibrational welding is the thing. They do. There was a classic accident in the early age of the nuclear age when they had a submarine where the nuclear reactor kind of went haywire, and people like melted their feet into the boat, like it like stuck the people to the metal, and they're so that's a physics act there. So if vibration is keeping me separate from the other things, and I'm composed of a stack of resonant atoms that are all vibrating at a certain frequency, if the vibrational frequency that is me is resonating as Aaron, why wouldn't that be considered a soul?
Sure.
Yeah, it fits the exact same definition as every other definition of a soul.
Yeah, it doesn't give a lot of credibility to the reincarnation theory.
Nope.
Because
nope,
if you
it doesn't.
expire, you can't be recreated.
My view of spirituality as a whole is I look at the world, picture the earth as a ball of water. And everything on that ball of water, whether it's a person or a giraffe or a blade of grass, is an icicle formed out of that water. Okay. It forms out of that water, shaped into the icicle. And as it's an icicle, it's individual and distinct from all others. It's living its own unique existence. It's gathering the dirt and debris of existence. It has its own shape, its own form. It's completely individual and distinct from every other living thing on the planet, every other shard of ice formed off of that ball. Okay. Completely distinct. It's gathering its own realm of existence. But then once the shard melts, it goes back to the ball. And the same way that you can't find a drop of water once it hits a glass of water, you can't, because it disperses. The energy, the form that composed me disperses into the ball and then ranges and conforms with everything else and combines, which makes new icicles that pop up composed of new compositions of individual and distinct lineup. So while I don't believe in any kind of omnipresent creator, and I don't think there's anybody judging me, I don't think that there's any rule book that's laid out cosmically that I have to follow, otherwise I'm going to go to a fiery pit. I don't believe any of that. I do think that if there is something out there that is quote unquote a god, I have neither the ability, reason, or inclination to be able to figure it out. And so to do so would be egotistical folly. And so I should just be able to exist where I am and know that the world I am is full of so many amazing wonders that fulfills my need for that. Like I look at the universe and I see like the cosmic cloud. I can't remember the name. I always forget the name when I'm doing this little bit.
Nebula?
There's a cosmic cloud that's composed of the chemicals that smells like root beer.
Oh.
the exact chemicals that we use for artificial root beer. There's an entire galactic cloud composed of that chemical. So somewhere out in space, there's a cloud of root beer flavor.
That's amazing. I want to go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could talk forever about this because now I'm fascinated about, what force intervened in your desire to stay alive.
Yeah.
At all. The love
Yeah.
that you feel toward your friends and your family, the motivation that Katie get inspired to give you, right? Like we could go so many different directions with this. But we're 2 hours in, and out of respect for everybody's time, including yours and mine, and my own empty belly, because I need to eat. We really need to wrap it up. But I want to ask two things. The first is if you could briefly touch. We met because one of my employees, a gal that I've mentored for a couple of years now, her dad, Stephen Bain, you work with with some regularity or frequency. I'd like to know what that relationship is because he's down in Southern California. You're in Colorado. Briefly tell us about that, please. And then I have one question that Mike always asks everybody before they depart.
Yeah. Oh, Stephen Bain, I met him through, he booked me to go out and speak. I went out and spoke twice now for the Irvine Unified School District. Excuse me, hiccups. And I'll be actually flying out in August and January to go speak again out for the Fontana Unified School District out in California. And Stephen is a fantastic guy. And the first one was just like, hey, when we're having a conference, we want you to come and speak. And I think when we did that first one, we saw that our missions are aligned and our visions for school safety really, really line up. And we both share a passion for being able to do whatever we can to try to help prevent more MEs from happening. And so, yeah, we've been teaming up. There's another speaker, Autumn Bignami, who was one of the survivors from the Las Vegas shooting, the Mandalay Bay, the concert shooting. She got shot 3 times during that incident. And so she's another speaker, and the two of us, she does her presentation, I do mine, and the package of it kind of really encapsulates the spectrum of school shootings, mass violence, and even suicides, because I'm of the opinion that we need to reclassify that also, that a single person dying by a gun should be included in that in the statistics, because there's not much of a line between suicide and homicide. And I think that the more we make that line straight up, the harder it is to actually see the problem. So yeah, Stephen's been a great guy.
That's cool. Yeah, that's an interesting point about the suicide homicide thing, because people say, gun violence, which I reject categorically because linguistically it's just inaccurate. But if you're going to say that, you have to include everything together.
Yeah.
And it's disingenuous to separate them out. I think that there's an argument to be made for suicide being violence upon self, for sure. And so, it seems like a semantic debate, but branching off of that, we have 100,000 overdose deaths a year in this country, and we could lump them all together and say these are deaths of despair is really what they are.
Yeah.
You got the homicides, whether or not they're firearm caused, suicides, whether or not they're firearm caused, overdoses, which I would classify as suicides. And I would even throw in the very all too mysterious single occupant, one vehicle car rollover or whatever, because that doesn't track with me outside of and very explainable like weather.
Well,
I think those deaths of despair need to be explored.
And I think those deaths of despair, and I don't want to go too deep in this, and we're almost going to wrap up, but if we look at the bigger picture of it, my biggest opponent, the biggest enemy that I fight when I'm doing all these speeches, what I call the negative social economy. It is from the outside, it looks like small islands of negativity. You got your Reddit forums, your incel subgroups, your YouTube, your X chat groups, all these different things that look Reddit, all these different things that look like small islands of negativity, and each in their own are pretty toxic. But it's not islands of negativity. It's an interconnected web of social networking with its own system of risk rewards and celebrity and everything. So the example I always use is, take me, for example. I said something that people like. Now I get to do cool things. I get to fly around the country. I get to do cool podcasts. I get to tell my story and help people. Cool. Let's take the opposite of me. Let's do the flip side of me. Let's say you're a kid who's harassing an abortion clinic so much that they're going to close their doors. All right. You do it really well, you're going to get rewarded for it. You do it so much, you get national attention, you're going to get celebrity for it. You do it enough to where the people that you get more than one news cycle national attention. Now you're becoming an icon in that. You're getting all the positive adulation you've been craving the entire time. Because at the base of it, the only thing you've been wanting is for someone to tell you that you're good enough and that you matter. And now they're telling you you're good enough and you matter because now you're being evil enough and mean enough to where we matter. Oh, and by the way, the ones that say that you're really being really mean and evil, they don't really see because they don't understand the reason why you're doing all of this. So they're the normies and we're the really smart ones. And so we're going to make the smart ones over here. And so those ones, they're just not nearly good enough because we're the superior ones. And that's how you end up with where we are today.
Yeah, a bunch of narcissists all trying to out-narcissist each other. That's really what's going on.
Exactly
look at me, look how great I am, reward me.
Well, and you'll find in the extremist networks, you'll find that the kids who are really depressed tend to fall into what I call hyper-focused intellectualism. So they'll find one tiny little sliver of a topic and learn everything about that topic, because that will give them something that they're smart about that everybody else doesn't know. And it gives them a sense of implied superiority. And you'll find it in weird political theories. Like if you ever hear someone talking about Herbert Marcuse, who's an obscure 18th century German philosopher who they blame socialism on, nobody knows him at all outside of the extremist networks that talk about him exclusively.
Well,
And
I don't know
so,
about that. I mean, I know Marcuse and how he folds in with the other postmodernists, and I do give a lot of blame there.
So that's the key, though, is that he's real and he is a real thing. So people do know about him. But in the extremist networks, like in that world, the people that know about him know everything about him. Like they will learn.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
All that slice, every bit of that slice, they'll learn it. So and that way it gives them something that separates them from people who don't know it. And the fact that it's real and the fact that it is really traceable makes it legitimate information that they can learn. It's not some fantasy that they're making up.
I just realized something about my own profession and how people specialize in certain modalities and won't move off of them. And I bet there's an echo there. I know everything about CBT, and it's like, does that make you good though?
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
So, and for the kid, it's a protective measure. For me, it was comic books. I learned everything about comic books because if I knew about it, then I had something that was mine and real. And that negative social economy uses that phenomenon to grab people up and be like, okay, cool. We know all about that too. They don't know about this because they're not as cool as we are, but we know it. So we're going to bring you in here. And it's a weird intellectual recruiting tactic.
All right. So on that note, Mike always asks, and I love it, how do you tend to your mental health?
So I love long walks. I love really long walks, especially after losing all my weight. When at my highest, I was so heavy I couldn't walk through a Walmart without stopping twice to rest. And now I measure my walks by horizons. So I look as far as I can look, and I walk that far and do that like 4 times. And so that's how I walk these days. So I'll go for really long walks and sing along with music, and lots of family time. I'm huge on. As examples of how to parent my own children, I just do the opposite. So if I tell them I love them so much, it's annoying. I'm at every game. I'm at every sports event. They have all their friends can come over and hang out at the house. Like when I come home from events, I'll walk into a herd of like 10 teenagers and maybe I'll know 2 of them, and that's totally fine. Like,
awesome.
Like we are the safe place. And so, yeah, I just do the opposite because I won.
That's cool. Well, and congratulations on your victory, and your ongoing victory. It's not an arrival point. It's a checkpoint. Well,
it is.
Thank you. Thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for taking the time. I know I appreciate it. Like I said, I'm always learning new stuff, and you definitely helped expand my own horizons. And I know Mike will appreciate this too. And it was just great talking to you because, like I said, we could talk about lots of things for a long time because you're a super smart guy who's read a lot and can articulate his points well. And that's just always enjoyable. So thank you. And on behalf of our entire Walk the Talk America family and all of our platinum sponsors, and of course, Kevin Barry behind the scenes, navigating all the technical difficulties as well as he has, we wish you all great mental wellness. Bye-bye.